Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is JGOD. In today's video, we're going to focus on the best weapons and perks in Call of Duty Black Ops 4. And although there hasn't been a ton of changes in the game recently, this is accurate as of the 1.11 update. If at any point you do enjoy the video, please remember to hit that like button. And if you are brand new to the channel, make sure you do subscribe if you are enjoying the content so you can find your way back to the channel. And just as a heads up, I'm going to go ahead and kind of keep this as a top 5 list for my top 5 weapons in the game, as well as top 5 perks with a few honorable mentions. So number 5 on the list for the weapon category is the Swordfish. And the reason the Swordfish made the list is because it is so versatile in so many different situations. And that is especially true when you run high caliber or the pentaburst attachments on this weapon, because it can convert it into a single burst weapon, which means you're going to be killing enemies incredibly fast. The other nice thing is that the time between shots isn't very long, so you're able to recover, and it's very forgiving if you do miss a few shots here and there. And the perk that takes the number 5 spot on my list is Dexterity. And the main reason Dexterity is so good is not necessarily for the accuracy portion, because that part has been proven not to be true, but it is significantly more useful in the sliding portion of it. You can slide much further, which can actually throw off your enemy and allow you to get a better position that much easier. We'll go ahead and move on to the number 4 weapon and perk on my list. But something I want you to keep in mind on this list is, although I'm talking about a lot of meta items, there is some of my opinion in here. So even though we'll have similar lists, I'm pretty sure the order will be slightly different. So the weapon I put at that number 4 slot is the Spitfire. And that's regardless if you use the Wildfire Operator mod or not. Even though that is a lot harder to use for the average player, I would say generally this weapon can dominate on almost any map. It really just comes down to how good you are at recoil management, because I'm pretty sure that this weapon has the highest amount of recoil in the entire game. So let me know down in the comment section below, are you a fan of it with or without that Wildfire Operator mod? And with that, we'll go ahead and transition into my number 4 ranked perk, which is Scavenger. And if I'm being 100% honest, this perk would rank much higher on my list if Crash was not in the game. Because in pretty much every other Call of Duty, I had Scavenger on my class. So this is a huge change when it comes to Call of Duty. And I think this is one of those perks that as you get better at the game, it definitely becomes more valuable. Because if you don't go on long streaks, you die, so you never really run out of ammo. But as you get better at the game, you start going on 10 streaks, 15, 20 pluses, you're definitely going to need that Scavenger to refill that ammo. That pretty much explains how Scavenger made the list. So as we've kind of worked through the list already, we've already hit up the number 5 and number 4. We'll go ahead and spend a little bit of time on an honorable mention. That is the KN57 rifle. I'm actually a pretty big fan of this rifle because it has a suppressor, but I feel like it gets beat out by a few other weapons on this list. That's why it kind of fell out of the list and made it to an honorable mention. I'm sure a lot of you guys like this weapon. Obviously the rifles in this game are pretty strong, so a lot of the other rifles in this game could have actually made the list or been honorable mentions, but I think this one is right at the top of that list. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to number 3 on my list, which is the Maddux rifle. This is actually probably one of the sweaty player gun, comp player, person that's going to be a tryhard, all that type of stuff, because it is a very solid weapon. And one of the reasons why I think this weapon is so good is because you can treat it like an SMG in those close quarters engagements, as well as a rifle in those medium to long range engagements. It is also the preferred weapon of professional players. So a lot of times what will happen is when people are playing competitively in competitive wager matches, they're going to be warming up, and this is the weapon they are going to use. So typically if you end up in a lobby against someone using the Maddux that is preparing for a match, they're going to be sweating out. They're going to probably be a very high skilled and very good player. They're just kind of warming up their shot in between matches. And although I think this weapon is very good and can be used competitively with the right attachments, I don't think it's overpowered in any way. And the reason I say that is because I've gotten into a little bit of arguments and debate in the comment section. Sometimes people come to the videos and say, what do you mean it's not overpowered? How can you say it's not overpowered? What are you talking about? So let me go ahead and further explain my stance on what it means to be overpowered in the game, because I think people have different perspectives on what it means to be overpowered. And for me, something is overpowered when it is head and shoulders above the rest of the meta in the game, and when something can close the gap between lower skilled and higher skilled players. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the number 2 and the number 1 weapon on this list. So the perk that's going to go ahead and take that number 3 spot on this list is Gung Ho. And in case you guys didn't know, there's a way to take advantage of the Gung Ho perk to get a 0 sprint out time, meaning that the moment you pull the trigger, a bullet comes out. And when you use Gung Ho the right way, it'll almost feel like you have quick draw on your weapon. I won't spend too much time on that because I've already done a full video on that. If you want to go ahead and check that out, I will leave a link down in the description below. And with that, let's go ahead and get on to our next honorable mention. And the perk we'll go ahead and talk about is Ghost. And overall, I think this is one of the more useless perks in the game because the UAV and all the different type of stuff in the game are very weak. So you're not going to pop up on the mini map other than firing your weapon. But where it does come in handy is when you load into a match late, or if you're playing solo and your teammates are just giving up those UAVs. It's actually one of the most annoying things to deal with is when you load into a match, all those UAVs in the air, and you're like, man, I didn't contribute to those UAVs. I didn't feed them 5 deaths so they can get this little UAV and know exactly where I'm coming from. So that's where you're going to go ahead and use Ghost, and that's where it's going to be handy. Because of that reason that it's not as strong in this Call of Duty, it wasn't able to make my top 5 list, but it did get an honorable mention. So now we're transitioning to the number 2 weapon on the list, and this weapon definitely needs a nerf, along with the number 1 weapon, which we'll get to shortly. And the weapon I'm talking about for the number 2 slot is the Titan LMG. Overall, I think the damage profile is too high, too far, all those good things with too low recoil. And on top of that, you could put on FMJ2, which can obliterate pretty much any streak in the game within a matter of seconds. And to top it off, it is even a default class, so you don't even need to be a certain level or have certain attachments. They've already put together a decent class for you. You just go ahead and click on that one in case you're getting mad, someone's beating you. Bust out the overpowered weapon with the thermal sight, and you can shoot down streaks immediately. So although I think it needs a nerf, they probably will not nerf it. The nerf I would suggest is to add more recoil in some way so you're not just able to laser people a mile away, and to remove FMJ2. And it's because of all that that it takes the number 2 spot on my list for the weapon category. And the number 2 perk on my list ranks a lot higher than it would in prior Call of Duties, and that is for one reason and one reason only, and that is the acoustic sensor. And the perk I'm talking about is Dead Silence. And even though the acoustic sensor has been nerfed twice, you're basically giving away your position anytime you're playing any match if the enemy player is running acoustic sensor and you do not have on Dead Silence. So if acoustic sensor was not in this game, I think that Dead Silence wouldn't even be an honorable mention. So do you agree or disagree with that statement? Do you think Dead Silence is mainly viable because there's an acoustic sensor? So if you have an opinion on that topic, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next honorable mention, which is the SOG 9mm. Overall, I think this is right up there with the Spitfire when it comes to the SMG category, but overall, the rest of the SMG category is fairly weak. And even though this is the top used competitive SMG, I think the biggest thing that holds this weapon back is the attachments. And that's what ends up happening with a lot of weapons in the game. The fact that you're not able to use whatever attachment you want on whatever weapon really limits your options on what is good to use on that specific weapon. So in the case of the SOG, I think the perfect attachment that is not available in the game is hybrid mags. They don't have extended mags. They do have fast mags 1 and 2, but obviously the trade-off to have a little bit more ammo in the magazine would allow it to compete with the Spitfire in my opinion. And one other example of how certain weapons don't have attachments so they're not able to compete is the fact that not every weapon has FMJ. So obviously in those scenarios where certain players are running body armor, you're going to be at a disadvantage if you're not able to equip that FMJ versus a weapon that is. So the number 1 weapon in the game at the moment is the Rampart 17. And I think the biggest issue with this weapon is that the time to kill is too fast at pretty much every range. And the fact that it can outgun most SMGs is just a little bit ridiculous. And there's 2 different things that contribute to this fast time to kill. The first being high caliber 1 and 2 can be attached, so if you hit chest and above, you're pretty much going to melt the enemy. And the second issue in my opinion is the fact that there's flinch in this game. And when you combine that with the fact that high caliber 2 is increasing that range that you're able to hit, anyone that's going to get flinched up, as long as they hit you, you're basically dead. There's only pretty much 2 nerfs I can think of when it comes to this weapon, and that is to reduce the rate of fire or increase recoil. Either one would make this weapon just slightly less overpowered, and then would make it so that the other weapons could compete. And that brings us to the number 1 perk in the game at the moment, at least in my opinion, which is Tac Mask. And the reason why Tac Mask is so good in my opinion is because it counters so much of the nonsense in the game, or at least reduces the effects. And there might even be a few things on this list that you weren't even aware of. It's significantly reduces the effects of 9 bangs and concussions. It'll also reduce the damage taken from Molotovs. It'll also reduce the damage taken from the reactor core and barricade, which are both pretty annoying. It also cuts the damage from barbed wire significantly and even allows you to melee barbed wire, so in case you want to destroy it without shooting it. It will also make it so you do not have to heal immediately after getting hit with Dragon's Breath. Also, if you get hit with the Tempest shot, you will be able to get up faster with less damage taken from you. It will also counter that secret drone automatically without prompting you to actually press the button. And it even helps to counter the new specialist 0 because the disruptor does nothing to you. And it also reduces how long you are hacked for from 30 seconds down to 15. So regardless if you agree it should be in the #1 spot, it definitely does a lot more than pretty much anything else in the game. And that's going to go ahead and wrap up my top weapons and perks in Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Hopefully you did enjoy the video. If you did, please do me a quick favor and hit that like button before you click away. If you are brand new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn those notifications on so you can find your way back to the channel. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.